Let's say you've decided that the Medicare supplement Medigap route is the right direction for you, as opposed to Medicare Advantage plans. It can seem so overwhelming, so complicated. There are different parts flying around. You have to duck a little bit to make sure you don't get hit. It's confusing, all the terminology. But if you give us 5 minutes, we're going to boil it down to where you're going to come out the other side saving money, making a better decision, and having a plan that fits better with your needs. So let's get right into it and figure out the whole Medigap Medicare supplement world and really make this easy. Before we look at Medigap plans, let's take a step back and look at traditional Medicare by itself. Why can't we just have that alone? Why do we even need a Medigap plan? This will help us frame it later on to understand which plan might be a better fit. So traditional Medicare is broken up into two main sections. Part A for hospital, Part B for doctor. Part A, usually you get right away because you've been paying into it your whole life through payroll taxes or a spouse has. Part B, you have to opt in and pay an extra premium based on prior income to Social Security. So when you sign up originally for Medicare, you get your Part A and usually you get your Part B set up right away. Those both have a deductible built in. A deductible is an amount you pay before they start to help. There's one deductible for Part A that's higher, and then one for Part B for doctor charges, which is lower. So Part A hospital, Part B doctor. The problem with it is after you meet your deductible, it works like an 80-20 plan, where you're paying 20% of the charges, Medicare's picking up 80%. The problem is there's no cap to that 20%. You could pay that indefinitely. We see bills all the time that are $500,000 or even higher. We've seen as high as $5 million for open heart surgery. If you're on the hook for 20% of $500,000, that means you need to find an extra $100,000 laying around the house. No one has that. No one wants to risk that. It makes no sense. When you can get a Medigap plan for a couple $100 and cover that risk, usually entirely, especially the Part A for hospital, which is really where the charges are these days. So that's why we need something to fill in the holes, the gaps around Medicare, and that's a Medicare supplement or Medigap plan. If you want a PPO style where you can go to any provider that accepts Medicare anywhere in the United States, you refer yourself out, you have more flexibility. That's the Medigap side of things. Now we know why we need something. It's really that 20% that can go on indefinitely. We have to cover that risk. Okay, let's start to turn further now, dive into Medigap Medicare supplements and understand what they have in common. This is the part where we're going to take a lot of the confusion out of the decision. Let's look at what Medigap plans have in common across the board, and it's quite a bit. We'll start with networks. Basically, they're identical for any Medigap Medicare supplement plan, regardless of the letter. They all have the same network in that you can see any Medicare provider anywhere in the United States. So any doctor or hospital which accepts Medicare, which is the majority of them, all your big hospitals, most of your doctors, because it's such a huge marketplace, they have to participate. That's identical. It doesn't matter if you get a G plan with one carrier versus another, or an N plan or an A plan. They all have the same work. That makes it super easy. Another key piece is that the levels are standardized. So a G plan with one carrier is going to be identical to a G plan with another carrier. Those benefits are standardized at the federal level. So that makes it a lot easier. We don't have to compare this G plan versus that G plan. We just have to compare different plan levels now. So we've taken care of all the doctors and hospitals, the networks. We've taken care of these differences between carriers in terms of at an individual level, like a G plan to a G plan. Let's start to zoom in now to all these different plan names that we have, because that's where a lot of people get confused as well. All right, let's go to the source of a lot of confusion when picking Medicare supplements or Medigap plans. It's all the different plan names and levels. You have A plans, N plans, G plans, the old F plans, not even available to new enrollees. How do we look at all this? Let's make this a lot easier and cleaner. First of all, Understand that the vast majority of enrollments are with the G plan. It's by far the most popular, probably 80% of the market for new enrollees. And there's a good reason why. It's the most comprehensive, and then it also covers excess, where doctors can charge more than what Medicare allows, up to 15%. There's no cap on that 15%. And so we like to have that capped if we can. You'll hear, oh, it's rare that a doctor, doesn't accept Medicare rates. The problem is in California, it's less rare because the cost structure is so much harder for doctors. More and more doctors are going to choose to charge that excess versus other states where it's still more affordable. It's expensive in California, just it's expensive for doctors to operate. Plus, there's more and more pressure on doctors with Medicare going forward because of the budget. So you're going to see more and more doctors choose to charge that. How many? I cannot get good information. I've reached out to Medicare. I've reached out to all the different entities that kind of govern and regulate this. No one has a hard number on that how many doctors charge excess. They'll throw out 5%. That's probably nationwide. So maybe Texas is 7-10%. Again, we can't get that info. The vast majority, though, will accept what Medicare allows. Just keep in mind, there may be doctors out there who don't. The G plan covers excess, the N does not. The other big difference, it's not really that big of a difference, is how they treat office visits. The G plan, you have your Part B deductible. Right now it's around $250. It goes up a little bit each year. For office visits, it means you're going to have to pay the first $250 of office visits. Then it's covered. That's the G plan. N plan, you have fixed copays for your office visits. So the rough guess is around 6 to 8 office visits in a year, and there's a wash between the two, between your premium savings and what you might pay out of pocket for office. It's kind of a 6 or half a dozen in terms of how we look at it. We like the G plan, especially if you're new to Medicare, because you're probably going to get a discount of $25 a month with the big carriers. But those are 85-90% of new enrollments for Medigap plans. You'll have a couple of G high deductibles, which is a G plan with a high deductible built in. Price-wise, it's kind of a wash in terms of whether or not that makes sense. You have a couple others that have other deductibles built in as well. They're not very popular. Make it easy for yourself. Look at the G, focus on that. Look at the N plan maybe as a backup. We're happy to walk through that. And we have lots of detail on the website where we walk through and compare the N versus G and how that stacks. But to make it super easy, G plan's pretty much the way to go, and 80 to 90% of Californians agree and go that direction. We're happy to explain the differences with you, but that's the bulk of the market, and for a good reason. It's the most comprehensive. Price-wise, you don't save enough to go down the scale with the other plans to justify what you're going to pay out of pocket, especially being 65 plus when claims are probably going to go up. So we now have our networks down. We now have the differences that are standardized. We now know that the G plan is probably the direction to go in terms of the Medigap. All right, how do we shop and compare the Medigap G plans that are out there for the California market? All right, we're going to show you the easy way to do this. And if you want, there's always the hard way. The easy way is, now that we know that networks are the same, we know that they're standardized, and we know that the G plan is probably the direction to go, especially if you're 65 and new to Medicare, then we run the quote across all the major carriers, and we can do that for you. We just need a zip code, date of birth. There's no cost for assistance. We'll hit all the major carriers, send you over a simplified grid where you can literally see them stacked up. If you also want to look at the N plan, let us know. We'll run that for you as well. But the G is kind of the tried and true, and we'll get that to you right away. All right, so what about carriers? How do we compare them? Are they that different? For the most part, customer service is pretty similar. The big 4 carriers, really there's 3. There's Blue Shield of California, there's Anthem Blue Cross, separate carrier from Blue Shield, and there's United Health ARP. And most people know those three. They've been doing it for decades now. They're solid. United Health has ARP as kind of the branding wizard behind and the locomotive driving that. Shield and Cross are just really good at Medigap. They've been doing it forever. Those are the big three. Health Net's kind of like a fourth runner up. All four of those offer a new to Medicare $25 a month discount for the first year. Take advantage of that. Why not? The reason being is, right now, since the G is the same regardless of the carrier, we're going based on pricing. Customer service are all about the same. So we want the best pricing because here's a little secret. We can use the California birthday rule to change plans to a similar or lesser value plan around our birthday each year, regardless of health. That's been the issue before. The birthday rule is that if your health changed, you're kind of stuck wherever you were. What's interesting is the cheapest plan at age 65 is probably not the cheapest plan at 70 or 75. In fact, almost never is. So it makes sense to price shop the market once a year around your birthday. We're happy to do that for you at no cost for our service to make sure you're on the best rate. Because in the end, pricing and pricing stability is what we're making a decision on with Medigap once we figured out what level we want to be at, for example, the G plan. So use the birthday rule to shop all the major carriers, have us do all the legwork for you. We'll shoot over, just email us, zip code, date of birth. We'll run the quotes across all the major carriers, not only the big four. We'll look at Mutual of Omaha, we'll look at Aetna, we'll look at Humana, we'll look at other carriers that also have a little bit of a footprint in that market just to make sure we're not overpaying. In the end, that's the end. Use the birthday rule to price shop once a year. Let us do the work for you. And that's the wrap on the Medigap plan. We can see any doctor. It's standardized. G plan's probably the way to go. We can look at other plans. It's a question of pricing among the carriers. They're all about the same in terms of customer service. For the Medigap market, which is different from other markets you may have been used to, be it Advantage, Small Business, Cover California. That's it. It's nice and easy. So email us zip code, date of birth. We'll send you over a quote. Whether you want to change or you just want to check out the market, make sure you're not overpaying, check with us. We can also run quotes for the Part D, which you need with a Medigap for medication. That's a separate plan altogether. Different carriers are going to be competitive there, but we just took the keys to the castle and gave it all to you. Reach out to us with any questions. Hopefully that's made the whole Medicare supplement world a lot easier for you.